Hello, my super curious friends. Today, we're going on a time travel adventure to a very long time ago, all the way back to the 1520s. We're going to explore a super interesting story about explorers from Spain, and a land called Central America, which was home to the amazing Maya people. It's like a big puzzle with lots of pieces, so let's put them together. Our adventure starts in 1524, which is even older than your great-great-grandparents' great-great-grandparents. This was when Spain, a powerful European country, rapidly expanded its influence and control across the region we now know as Central America. Think of it like a giant game of Build a City, but instead of blocks, they were building a whole new way of life for everyone, dismantling existing indigenous political systems, and establishing their colonial structure, which they called New Spain. During this period, Spain was eager to connect all the territories they were discovering and claiming. Central America, especially the lands inhabited by the vibrant and resourceful Maya civilization, was considered a particularly valuable and strategically important area. There were so many cool and valuable things to be found there. Imagine a land rich with resources like cacao, which is used to make our favorite chocolates, maize corn, which was a staple food for many, beautiful green jade stones, prized for their artistry, and vibrant dyes used to color textiles. It was truly like discovering a giant, overflowing treasure chest, full of natural wonders and economic potential. Now, a very important person named Pedro de Alvarado, who was a brave and seasoned explorer, arrived in the highlands of Guatemala in 1524. His arrival marked the beginning of the full-scale subjugation of the Maya highland kingdoms. He wasn't alone, though. He brought along indigenous allies from other groups he had previously encountered and formed agreements with in Mexico, such as the Tlaxcala and Cholula people, to help him. Together, they launched attacks against the Maya polities, or kingdoms, in the region. Major highland Maya kingdoms, such as the powerful Quiche and the resilient Xochitl, faced immense pressure. Many were either completely defeated in battle, or forced to surrender their independence between 1524 and 1530, marking a significant and often challenging shift in their history. The Xochitl people, who were a prominent Maya kingdom, actually tried to be friends with the Spanish at first. They formed an initial alliance, hoping to perhaps gain an advantage or maintain some autonomy. However, this alliance quickly soured, due to what the Spanish demanded: excessive tribute. This tribute wasn't just a small offering, it involved vast amounts of their resources, labor, and precious goods, which the Xochitl found to be an unfair and unbearable burden. So, the Xochitl bravely rebelled, saying, "No, this isn't fair," and fought back against the Spanish forces. Despite their valiant efforts, they were not fully subdued until 1530, even though many early conquests progressed quickly, like a fast-moving stream. The complete subjugation of all the Maya territories and peoples took a remarkably long time. It wasn't until 1697 that the last independent Maya groups were brought under Spanish control. Can you believe it? That's like a 170-year-long struggle, a persistent effort by the Maya to maintain their freedom. The Itza Maya, who lived in a place called the Petén Lowlands, were especially good at maintaining their independence and cultural traditions, resisting foreign domination until almost the very end, in 1697. So, why did Central America become such a big target for Spain in the 1520s? Well, there are a few super important reasons, like chapters in a thrilling historical novel. First, imagine a giant puzzle piece falling into place that changed everything. A very big and impressive empire called the Aztec Empire, located in what is now Mexico, had just been captured by another brave and ambitious explorer, Hernán Cortés, in 1521. After this momentous victory, Spain was very keen to control all the valuable trade routes that intricately linked southern Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras. It was like wanting to control all the major highways and shipping lanes, so everyone could travel safely and efficiently. bringing their goods and treasures to sell and exchange. Second, there was a little bit of friendly competition, or perhaps not so friendly, between the Spanish explorers and factions themselves. It wasn't just Spain against the indigenous peoples, there were internal rivalries. There were two main teams or factions, one led by Cortés and operating out of Mexico, and another representing the Panama Governor's faction, comprising the successors of Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who were exploring from the south. Both teams were fiercely competing for dominance and control over the rich lands and resources of Central America. This intense competition actually spurred them to explore and expand even faster, each trying to outdo the other in claiming new territories. Third, and this was a crucial factor, was the political fragmentation of the indigenous world, particularly among the Maya. Unlike a single, unified empire, the Maya were organized into dozens of independent kingdoms or city-states, each with its own ruler, distinct culture, and often, its own rivalries with neighboring Maya groups. This decentralized structure made them vulnerable to Spanish manipulation. Spain cleverly exploited this situation through strategic alliances with certain Maya groups, betrayals when it suited their purposes, and employing classic divide and rule tactics. It was like a very smart strategy, making temporary friends with one kingdom to weaken another, and ultimately helping the Spanish become stronger. Now, let's talk about why the Spanish were so effective in their conquest, like why their team often won the most challenging games. There were a few big, undeniable reasons that dramatically impacted the outcome. One was their super cool and advanced military technology. The Spanish possessed firearms, which are like loud, powerful sticks that shoot projectiles with incredible force, creating fear and chaos. They also had cavalry, meaning soldiers on horseback, which was a terrifying and completely new sight for the Maya, who had never encountered horses before. These animals were like super fast, giant, intimidating creatures. Furthermore, the Spanish were equipped with strong steel weapons, such as swords and lances, and wore protective steel armor. The Maya, on the other hand, primarily relied on traditional stone weapons, such as obsidian-edged clubs and spears, and wore armor made of padded cotton, which, while effective against traditional weapons, offered little protection against steel or firearms. So, in direct combat, the Spanish often had a significant technological advantage, like bringing a highly advanced robot to a simple rock-throwing contest. Another incredibly sad and devastating reason was something very tiny that you couldn't even see: diseases. Little germs like smallpox, measles, and other old-world diseases, which were common in Europe where the Spanish came from, were completely new to the indigenous populations of Central America. Their bodies had no natural immunity to these foreign pathogens, so they couldn't effectively fight them off. These diseases spread like wildfire, causing widespread epidemics and devastating entire communities. In the Guatemala region alone, between 1525 and 1550, it's estimated that a staggering number of people, around 1.6 million, tragically died. Imagine almost an entire country's population getting sick and passing away in just 25 years. It was a terrible and unforeseen catastrophe that severely weakened indigenous resistance. And finally, the political fragmentation of the Maya, as mentioned earlier, also made them more vulnerable, because they were not a single, unified empire, but rather a collection of independent kingdoms. It was harder for them to all come together as one massive, coordinated team to effectively fight off the Spanish invaders. This decentralized political structure, while culturally rich, allowed the Spanish to manipulate local rivalries and conquer groups, one by one, rather than facing a monolithic opposition. Let's zoom in on how this conquest actually happened, looking at different parts of Central America, like different scenes in a captivating historical movie. First, the Guatemala Highlands, between 1524 and 1527, was like the main stage or the primary theater of this grand conquest. In 1524, Pedro de Alvarado made his decisive entry with his Tlaxcalan and Colulan allies, The powerful Qiche kingdom faced swift defeat, and their majestic capital city, Huamarcaj, was captured, marking a significant early victory for the Spanish. The Kaqchikel kingdom, as we discussed, initially formed an alliance with Spain. However, this alliance quickly deteriorated, due to the overwhelming demands for tribute, leading to a brave and determined rebellion by the Kaqchikel people. Despite their fierce resistance, their rebellion was ultimately crushed in 1530. Consequently, the Highlands region came under relatively swift Spanish control, compared to other areas, but in other regions, like Yucatan, Chiapas, and Honduras, from the 1520s, all the way to the late 1530s and even beyond, things were considerably different. These areas resisted Spanish domination for far longer, proving to be much more challenging for the conquistadors. The Maya city-states in Yucatan were incredibly clever and resourceful. They skillfully employed guerrilla tactics, which involved surprise attacks, followed by quick retreats into the dense, unfamiliar forests. This made it extremely difficult for the Spanish, who were accustomed to more open-field battles, to effectively pursue and defeat them. It was like a very strategic and drawn-out game.